Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mir Hashem. Today we will be learning Daf Kuf Lamed Beis Amid Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the very bottom line of Kuf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis with Siman Shin Yud Zayin Sif Beis. Our learning should be a schus refuah shalema from our Shemer ben Esther Fradel, Yitzchak ben Sion ben Dusha, Rivka bas Shiraleah, Chava Hadassah bas Serel, Avraham ben Sion ben Sarah Liba. They should have a refuah shalema b'sar shar chel Yisrael. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu kabeis Yisrael, Hanasuna bat Sarah u'bashivya, ha'imdim bein bayam u'bein bayabasha, hamakim yerachem aleihem, v'yetziim yitzar l'rvacha me'afel la'oiro mishibud l'gu'ula, hashta bagolo v'zman kariv v'nemar amen. Our learning should be a schus. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way, b'chol makim shehem. Says the Mechaber Sif Beis. Nishbutu loy ritzuais minal v'sandal. If the straps of a shoe or of a sandal came out. Oy shenishmat roiv haregel. Or most of the part of the shoe that is covering and securing the foot in the shoe becomes undone so that the foot can slip out. And we'll explain both of these in a moment. Mutar lahachzir haritzuais limekaiman. You're allowed to put the straps back into their proper places, ubavad shelo yikshar, so long as you do not tie a knot. Okay, that's the words of the Mechaber, and that is a very neat, succinct translation of the words of the Mechaber. What precisely does the Mechaber mean? So, the first thing we have to remember is the construction of the shoes that we've discussed already several times, and that is you have the sole of the shoe. The sole of the shoe had holes in it. There were leather straps that went through those holes, and they were knotted on the underside of the sole of the shoe so that the straps cannot pull out. That is a very basic, rudimentary shoe, so you would have, let's say, a couple of straps, one strap maybe, that went over the top of the foot on the front of the foot, maybe another strap that went over the foot coming closer to the leg and to the ankle. Maybe there was a strap going around the back as well, and these straps would go through holes in the sole, and each point where the strap goes through the sole of the shoe, there would be a knot on the underside to prevent the strap from pulling out and coming off the shoe. We already learned in Sif Aleph that to go ahead and put the strap into the hole and tie that knot, if this is done by ratzonim, if this is done by cobblers, and they're tying a cobbler's knot, so according to the Mechaber, this would be an Issa Daraisa. It's a Kesher Shakayama, it's Darker Lias Kach La'olam. When the cobbler constructs the shoe, he wants those straps to remain there, La'olam, for the life of the shoe, and he's a cobbler. So he's using a knot which is a Maise Uman. So you tick off both boxes, Maise Uman, Kesher Shakayama. To make such a knot would be an Issa Daraisa. What we're talking about over here, in the first case of Sif Beis, is nishbutu loy ritzuais minal v'sandal. What happened is, this is not a cobbler. The end user, the consumer, who has purchased the shoe and who has been wearing the shoe for a while, now he has a problem. The strap actually pulled out of the hole. And now what he wants to do is, he wants to take the strap and he wants to push it back through the hole. Says the Mechaber, and this is the first case of Sif Beis, nishbutu loy ritzuais minal v'sandal, if the strap came out of the hole, so then the Mechaber says, mutar lahachzir haritzuais l'mekaiman. You're allowed to push the strap back through the hole, ubelvad shelo yikshar, with the qualifier that you cannot go ahead and tie that knot. Now, the reason you can't tie the knot is, well, let's do the math. Even if you're the end user, you're the consumer, you're the owner of the shoe, and you're not a cobbler, so you're not going to tie a kesher that's a Maise Uman, because you're not an Uman, but it still is a kesher shal kayama. You're tying it, and it's darker lias kach la'olam, so in Issa D'Rabbanan, it will definitely be, right? So, therefore, to go ahead and tie the knot, you can't do. But what you can do, says the Mechaber, is just simply take the strap that has come out of the hole and push it back in. That's the first case of the Mechaber. Then the Mechaber had another case, and that was Oishe Nishmat Roiv Haregel. Now, to understand that case, we're going to wait until we see Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Yod Zayin. So now let's go into the Mishnah Berurahs. The first Mishnah Berurah is Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Tez Zayin on the very bottom line of Kuf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis. Says the Chavetz Chaim, the case of the Mechaber over here is talking about an old shoe. It's a used shoe. You've been wearing this shoe for a while, and I guess maybe the hole wore out, so the ritzua, the strap, came out. You want to push it back in. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Aval b'minol chadash, if you're talking about a brand new shoe, aser litein haritzuais b'Shabbos, you're not allowed to put the strap into a new shoe on Shabbos, afilu im hanekev rochav, and this is true even if it's not going to take a lot to put the strap into the hole. You have a brand new shoe and somehow the strap is out, you're not allowed to push the strap through the hole. Why? The mesakin moneh, because this would be a problem of tikud moneh. If you have a new shoe and right now it can't be worn because it's not fully constructed, the strap is not properly through the hole, and now you take the strap and you put it through the hole, what you just did is you finished the shoe. If you finished the shoe, that's makeh b'patish, that's tikkun moneh. You've done the final step of finishing off the keli and making the keli usable. That would be aser because of makeh b'patish. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, and he says, V'huadin b'sarbol, this would also be true by some kind of a warm jacket or coat. Oy b'michnasayim chadoshim, or a brand new pair of pants. Now these were jackets or pants that had drawstrings. So you might have a jacket that's constructed so that there's a drawstring around the neck, and that's how you fasten it closed. You could have a pair of pants where instead of having belt loops and a belt that you put through, it has a drawstring that goes through the waistband of the pants. So the Mishnah Berurah says, if you have a new jacket or you have a new pair of pants and the drawstrings have not yet been inserted into their pockets or into their sleeves, also you would not be allowed to put in a leather strap or some kind of a rope. Because when you do that, what you're doing is you have a pair of pants that right now is not fully usable the way it is. It doesn't have the drawstring inserted. You're going to take the drawstring, you're going to put the drawstring in where it belongs. Now, this is not like a belt. A belt is something which is made to be removable. When you go buy a pair of pants, it doesn't have a belt. It has loops for a belt, but it doesn't have a belt. You go, you buy a pair of pants, you bring it home, you take your favorite belt. If it's Shabbos, you take a Shabbos belt. If it's weekday, you take a weekday belt. Some people have more casual belts, more dress belts, a black belt, a brown belt. So the belt to a pair of pants is something which is meant to be put in, taken out. It's meant to be removable, and it is not part of the pant. You don't take it and install it into the pants and be mavatal it there and leave it there so that it becomes part of the pants. The drawstring is not that way. The drawstring is a part of the pants. When you take the drawstring and you insert it into its pocket and you feed it through, you have now been mavatal it there. You intend on leaving it there. So by putting it in, you made it part of the pants. That's makeh b'patish. You're finishing off the pants. The pants were unfinished. They didn't have the drawstring yet. You installed the drawstring and you intend on leaving it there. That is makeh b'patish, and the Mishnah Berurah is saying the same halacha would apply to some kind of a jacket or a coat that also has such a drawstring. And now the Mishnah Berurah draws the distinction between the drawstring and the belt that I just told you about. Says the Mishnah Berurah, aval avnate, but something like a belt, pants that we have nowadays, and you want to put in a belt, shari lach nisai, you're allowed to put it in, afilu b'michnasayim chadoshim, even into a brand new pair of pants. Why? T'lo mevatalei hasam, because you're not installing the belt on the pants with the intent on leaving it there. You're not being mevatal to the pants and making it part of the pants so that now you could say, oh, you just finished off the pants. No. The pants are a standalone garment. They are finished the way they are without the belt. A belt is an accessory. You put it in, you take it out, you put it in, you take it out. It's not makeh b'patish to put in a belt. Many of you might be wondering right now what the halacha is of shoelaces in shoes. We're going to get to that momentarily. Now let's go to Mishnah Katan Yud Zayin, where the Chavetz Chaim discusses the second case of the Mechaber. The second case of the Mechaber was Oishenishmat Roiv Haregel, which literally means that most of the foot is slipping off of the shoe. Explains the Chavetz Chaim, Sheminolim Shalohem, some of their shoes, Hayu Asuyim Prakim, were made out of separate parts. The shoe had several parts to it. There was a base, there was a sole, and then instead of just having like individual straps, that would be more like a sandal. So like I explained earlier, you might have a leather strap at the front of the foot, another leather strap closer to the ankle, another leather strap around the back. That's a sandal. It's a base, a platform, and straps. But then you have a shoe. A shoe covers more of the foot. Their shoes were made out of various parts. That's what prakim means. Sheminolim shalahem hayu asuyim prakim. Their shoes were constructed out of several different parts. Umechubarim al yedei haritzuos. And somehow these parts of the shoe were held together using leather straps. So it's not just a sole and straps. It's a sole, and then maybe it's a covering that covers over most of the foot. But what held everything together? What held everything together were leather straps. If the part of the shoe construct that covers most of the foot, so this sounds like it's a piece of leather that goes over the front of the foot, the toe box, and then going back towards the ankle and towards the leg. You had a piece, a part of leather, a part of the shoe that covered most of the foot. Says the Chavetz Chaim, what the Mechaber means is, if that part of the shoe shifted out of its place. Sounds to me like what happened is, you had a pair of shoes that was constructed in this fashion, and when it's new, it all stays together very tightly. So you put in your foot, and it molds and it fits nice and firmly around your foot, and as you walk, it stays together. But as the shoe gets old, what's holding this whole thing together? Leather straps. And how are the leather straps fashioned to the shoe? In the way that we spoke about earlier. They go through holes in the sole, and they're knotted underneath. So essentially, it sounds to me like the difference between the sandal and the shoe, the basic construction of the shoe is the same way. You have a sole, leather straps, go through holes, knotted on the underside. The difference between the sandal and the shoe is the sandal is only straps. The shoe has another leather component to it, like a cover that covers the foot. There are straps that go over it and fasten it down to the shoe. Now, over time, this whole construct will loosen up. If it loosens up to the extent that that part of the shoe shifts out of place, and now it's too loose, says the Mishnah Berurah, Machzer umahatkoi mechodosh, you could go and you could re-tighten it al yedei haritzuos, using the leather straps. Now, if you understand the second case of the Mechaber this way, it doesn't sound like the second case of the Mechaber is posing much of a chiddush over the first part. In both cases, essentially what you're doing is you're taking those leather straps, pushing them back through the holes. And we're saying that that's mutter, that's not a problem, as long as you don't tie it. V'yesh b'farshim, but there are those that explain this second case, shenishbat min oloi me roiv ragloi al yedei she'ein mehudak. There are those that explain that what this really means is, not that the part of the shoe that's covering most of the foot, but, shifts out of place. What it means is that most of your foot is coming out of the shoe. Why is most of your foot coming out of the shoe? Again, because the construction of the shoe loosened up and you have straps that are coming out. And now what you want to do is, you want to take the ritzua and you want to put it into a new hole. So the way the shoe was constructed, you had those leather straps going through the holes, and you had the knots underneath securing it in place. Now it became loose. Maybe the leather straps stretched out. You know what you want to do now? You want to pop the leather straps out, and you want to push them through new holes. You have a tighter hole. Maybe you have holes that come more to the center of the foot, right? So that now it'll be tighter or something, or maybe further back on the shoe, whatever it is. Kind of like a belt, right? A belt has holes that, depending on how you adjust the belt and where you put the tongue of the belt through which holes, it's going to be tighter or it's going to be looser. Somehow this shoe was also constructed that you could adjust the tightness of the shoe by popping out the straps and putting them into different holes. In either way, whichever the pshat, the exact pshat in the Metzius, the second case of the Mechaber is, either way, what the Mechaber is telling you is, you're allowed to take these leather straps and put them into the holes as long as you do not tie a knot. Says the Mishnah, you're allowed to take the straps and put them into the holes. First of all, says the Mishnah, you're only allowed to work with the existing straps of the shoe. But to take new straps and put new straps onto the shoe, that would be aser. The mikre mesakin moneh. This would now be a problem of makeh bepatish. By taking brand new straps and putting brand new straps into the shoe, it's almost as if you're reconstructing the shoe. You're making a new shoe from scratch. That would be a problem of tikkun moneh. Oiskat Yates, the Mechaber said this is mutar ubilvad shelo yikshar, so long as you don't go ahead and tie those knots. Pirish, you don't make that knot at the end of the ritzua on the underside of the shoe that prevents the ritzua from being pulled out through the hole. And why can't you do that? Because it's a kesher shakayama. Now the Mishnah is being very meduyik over here. The reason you, the end user, the consumer, the owner of the shoe, the reason you can't make that knot is only because it's a kesher shakayama. Pashtus, it's not a maise uman, because you're not a cobbler. So it's not a maise uman. But even if it's not a maise uman, it is a kesher shakayama because you want it to remain there for the life of the shoe. It's darker lias kach la'olam, and that's why you cannot make the knot. The Achreinim are troubled by this. The Achreinim do not like this psak of the Mechabers, saying that you're allowed to push the strap through the hole so long as you don't make a knot. Why don't they like it? Now again, let's just understand. The basis for the Mechaber's heter is because what Isser is there? You're not making a knot, so there's no kosher problem. There's no tikkun moneh problem because you're dealing with an old shoe and old straps. So you're not creating a new shoe. There's no tikkun moneh here. It's an existing shoe. You're not doing makeh b'patish. So that's the basis for the heter. But the Achreinim don't like the heter. Why? They say that even if the hole is a very wide hole, and even if when you push it in, you're not doing a tikkun money, you're not doing anything that, you see, if the hole was a tight hole, we'll see that there could be an additional problem. But even if the hole is a wide hole and there's no kosher and there's no makeh b'patish, the Achreinim still don't like it. You know why? Because they say b'makom sheregilim likshar, if the way shoes in that locale are made is that you make the knot on the underside of the shoe to hold the strap in place, techashinan shebiyikshar. Then we have to be chayshish that if we're going to allow you to push the strap through the hole, you might come to be kosher. You might come to make the knot. And that would be an issa d'Rabbanan for sure. And if you make a knot that's a ma'isa uman, it would even be an issa d'Oraisa. So we have to be chayshish for that. Uvemakom shanekev tsar, and if the hole is a small hole, then there's a new problem, says the Mishnah Berurah, the name of the Achreinim. Then afilu b'makom she'ein regilim likshar, then even in a locale where we don't have to be chayshish that you might come to make a knot, it's still aser. Why? Ditzarich toirach. Now, this is very interesting. Ditzarich toirach. The Mishnah Berurah is saying the Achreinim are very troubled by the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. The psak of the Shulchan Aruch is you're allowed to take the strap, push it back through the hole, so long as you don't make the knot. The Achreinim have two problems with this. They say, first of all, if it's a place where typically you would make that knot, then we have to be chayshish that you might come to make the knot, and we should not allow you to do this. Then say the achrayim, there's another problem. This hole that the straps are going into, is it a wide, sort of loose hole, or is it in a tight hole? If it's a tight hole, then it's going to take tercha to go ahead and push the leather strap through the hole. Let's remember, we're talking about a shoe that you're going to walk with, and your foot is going to be putting pressure on this strap, and if it's a very loose hole, the strap is just going to pull right out through the hole, right? So obviously, if we're talking about a strap going through a hole, and we're saying that you don't need a knot to hold it in place, sounds to me like this hole is a very tight hole. And you're probably going to have to take the leather strap, you might have to use an awl or something to go ahead and push it and force it through the hole. This is going to take tercha. Now, so what? So it's going to take tercha. Why does that make it usher? Right? That's what the Mishnah is saying here. The Akrayim say, if it's a narrow hole, then this should be usher. Why should it be usher? Ditzoyrich toirach. Because it's going to take tercha to put it in. So if you look at the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch Harav over here is that since it's going to take tercha to put the strap in, it now becomes tikkun moneh and makeh bepatish. And it seems that what the Shulchan Aruch Harav is saying is like this. If you have a shoe where the strap came out, or you have a shoe where you need to readjust the shoe, so you need to put the strap into a different hole, and it's going to take tercha to put it through the hole, that means that the act that you're doing is a ma'aseh chashuva. It's a chashuva act that you're doing. It's significant. It's you're doing something that takes tercha. You're doing a piece of work to go ahead and push this strap through. And l'chayra, it's going to remain in place. That already becomes tikkun moneh. Now it's already like you're making a new shoe, or you're remaking the shoe. To just take a strap and push it through a hole, what, you made a shoe? No, you didn't make a shoe. I had a used shoe, the strap came out, I put it back in. But if the ma'aseh that you're doing is such a ma'aseh chashuva that it takes tercha, and you have to go, and you have to work, and maybe you have to get it all, and you have to push it through, and everything else, this already feels, smells, and tastes like you're making a shoe. So this is already a problem of tikkun moneh and makeh bepatish. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'im kain, if so, b'ritzuos shalanu, when it comes to leather straps by us, b'minolim, by shoes, uv'michdasayim, and by pants, the regila liksha b'roishon, where typically the drawstrings and the straps of the shoes do have knots to prevent them from slipping out, afilu im hanekev rachav, even if you're talking about a wide hole, so you don't have this tikkun moneh problem, because it's not a terka to put them in, still asr lachziron, you wouldn't be allowed to put them in. Why? Because we have to be chayshish that you might come to make a keshesh kayama va'ayin bebir halacha. Now, halacha l'maisa, when it comes to our shoes, the way most poskim seem to paskin is that when you have a brand new pair of shoes that does not come with the laces already put in, so you have a brand new pair of shoes that were never laced yet, you're not allowed to put laces into the shoe on Shabbos. Because to put the laces into the shoe would be makeh bepatish. This shoe was never finished yet. It can't be worn the way it is. A lace-up shoe can't be worn without the laces. It's going to fall off your feet. And definitely, you'll start arguing with me, well, you know, a brand new shoe, it's not broken in yet, it's tight, technically, you could wear it as a slip-on, it's not mamish, your foot is mamish going to come out. It's definitely not the derech to wear it that way, and you're not going to wear it that way. People are going to look at you like you're mudna. You're walking around with a lace-up shoe without laces. So this is not yet a finished shoe. You're finishing it when you put in the laces. However, once the shoe already had laces and you're repairing the laces, it's already a shoe. It's not, and you're not doing a maisa that takes a tircha and everything else that you're remaking the shoe. This is not called shoe reconditioning. Shoe reconditioning is when you send it back to the cobbler and they do the heels and they do the soles and they polish it up and everything else. This is not shoe reconditioning. The laces came out, you're putting in new laces. But that's not makeh bepatish because it already is a finished shoe. Okay, moving along to Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber. Now, just as a very brief, very basic hakdama to Sif Gimel, We just have to know a brisa that's brought down in Masechta Shabbos Taf Mem Ches Amud Aleph. The brisa says, Matirin Beis Hatzavar B'Shabbos. You're allowed to open up the neck opening of a shirt on Shabbos. You're allowed to release it. Matir doesn't mean to open it. Matir means to release it. You're allowed to release the neck opening of a shirt on Shabbos. Avaloi Poischen. But you're not allowed to open it up for the first time. That's what the brisa says. The question is, exactly what isurim are we dealing with here? Exactly what is the brisa asering? What is the brisa being matir? That's the subject of Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber Sif Gimel, 3 lines down, Kuf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, middle of the line. Matirin Beis Hatzavar, you're allowed to release and open the neck opening of, let's say, a shirt, mikesher shekisharoi koives, from the knot that the launderer tied. The launderer, what used to happen over here was, so you know how nowadays sometimes you take the shirt, you take a nice white Shabbos shirt, and you send it out to the laundry. And when they bring it back to you, when you go to pick it up, they press it, and they starch it, and they fold it, and sometimes they put in stiffeners, and they put it into a nice box. So they return it from the launderer. They don't just, give it back to you haphazardly. They give it to you in kind of a way that's meant to keep it nice and fresh and crisp and everything else. So the world hasn't changed much. The launderers back then did it also. You took the shirt and you gave it to the kaives, you gave it to the launderer. They would take the neck opening and they would tie it closed. And somehow this kept it in good condition. So you went, you gave it to the launderer. When you picked it up, you got it, and it was tied. The Beis Hatzavar, the neck opening, was tied closed. Obviously, in order to wear it, you need to open it. Question becomes, are you allowed to open this on Shabbos? Says the Mechaber, yes. Matirin Beis Hatzavar, you're allowed to open up the neck opening, mikesher shekesharoi koives, from the knot that was tied by the launderer. All right, so let's start doing the math. We have a shirt. They took some kind of a strap or a string. They tied a knot to close the neck opening. Now you want to open that knot on Shabbos. Well, we know right away the halacha, any knot that you're not allowed to tie on Shabbos, you're not allowed to open on Shabbos. If you're allowed to tie it on Shabbos, you're allowed to open it on Shabbos. So how do we look at this knot? What is this knot? Well, it's not a kesher shakayama. Certainly, in the world of the Mechaber, it's not a kesher shakayama. The Mechaber, the Rif, the Rambam, what's called a kesher shakayama? Darko Elias kach la'olam, a bona fide permanent knot. This is not a kesher shakayama. The launderer tied it. He wants you to open it to put your shirt back on. So, in the world of the Mechaber, it's certainly not a kesher shakayama. We're going to see that the Mishnah is going to tell us, according to most, even according to the Ramah, even according to Rashi and the Rosh, who say that even a semi-permanent knot, a kesher shel kayama, meaning a kesher that was tied for ktsas zman, something that was made to last for a significant amount of time. And we saw 2 opinions. What's called a significant amount of time? More either 7 days at least, or 24 hours. Right? That's already a kesher shakayama, that's an issa d'Rabbanan. But this knot that the kaivis tied up really is not even that kesher shakayama. We're going to see one sheet in the Mishnah Berurah that holds that it is. But according to the first sheet that we'll see in the Mishnah Berurah, even according to Rashi and the Rosh, this is not a kesher shakayama. Why? Because when the launderer tied that knot, did the launderer tie the knot to remain in place for 7 days? Did the launderer tie the knot to remain in place for more than 24 hours? No. The launderer tied the knot because part of his laundering process is to tie the neck opening closed so that it should stay nice. But the intent is that the minute you pick it up, you're going to open it. And the launderer doesn't know when you're going to pick it up. He doesn't care when you're going to pick it up. So you'll tell me, well, Rabbi Weiss, what if the ticket says that it's not going to be available for 3 days? And so he knows that he told you it's not going to be ready until Wednesday, and you're tying it on Monday. So it was meant to be closed for 1 to 24 hours. No, it wasn't. Because to the launderer, loy ichpat loy klum. The launderer could not care less how long that knot stays closed. He did not tie the knot so that it should remain in place for ktsas zman. As far as he's concerned, if you pick it up in 10 minutes, he's perfectly happy with you opening the knot. So this knot is not, no pun intended, it's not a kesher shakayama in any way, shape, or form. Right? Now, it's also, the Achrayim say, not a maaseh uman. Even though this is being done by a launderer, so it's being done by a professional, but the Kovsim did not use a professional knot. It's not, oh, that's a launderer's knot. No, we have such a thing as a camel driver's knot. We have a sailor's knot. Maybe we have a fisherman's knot, but there's no such thing as a launderer's knot. They used a common knot. So, okay, so if we do the math and we look at the status of this knot, l'chayra, tying this knot on Shabbos would not be an isser, because it's not a kesher shakayama, it's not a maaseh uman, so why would it be usher? So if it's not usher to tie the knot, it's mutter to open the knot. So the math works very, very well over here. Let's see it again in the Mechaber. Matirin beis hatzavar, you could open up the neck opening mikesher shekashari kaivis from the knot that the launderer used to tie the neck opening closed. Why? She'ena kesher shakayama. Because it's bechlal not a kesher shakayama, and we have to add in between the lines, and it's also not a maaseh uman. Let's see the Mishnah over here. Is Chaf Aleph says the Chavetz Chaim she'ena kesher shakayama she'ena osir lihiskayim rak at sheyikachenu abal habayis lebeisai. Because when the launderer tied that knot, he didn't do it to last any amount of time until you pick it up. So it's not a kesher shakayama. Now, but v'yesh machmirin b'davar. He does bring down the sheet of the Taz, who's machmir over here. Why? Elim kein osir lahatir ba'isa yom shalakvisa. The Taz does take issue with this. The Taz says, if the launderer, when he tied the knot, knew that it was going to be untied the day that he tied it, then it's not a kesher shakayama. But if he knows that you're not picking it up until tomorrow, until 2 days later, so then this knot really was planned and intended to remain in place for more than 24 hours. Now, it's already kesher shakayama, according to the shittas that we saw earlier, Rashi, the Rosh, the more machmer opinion that more than 24 hours is already a semi-permanent knot. So the Taz is machmer. The Poskim say we could be saimach on the more kuludik opinion here. We don't have to be machmer like the Taz. Okay, so that's the first case of Sif Gimel. Now let's go to the second case of Sif Gimel, which was the second case of the Brisa that I quoted to you earlier. So you could open up the knot that's tying the neck of the shirt closed, because that's no issue at all. No issue at all. Aval, however, 4 lines down near the beginning of the line, says the Mechaber, Aval ein poischin oisai mechadosh. But you cannot open up a neck opening of a garment for the first time, the misakin manahu, because that's called tikkun maneh. Now, it's machlokes rishonim in the Gemara and Shabbos exactly what this means, that you can't open up a neckline for the first time. The Mechaber is learning, I'm thinking now that it's Shitas Rashi, that you can't open it mechadash means that you just got this garment and pashut, the neck opening wasn't opened yet. The way they sold the garment was there was a neck opening. Maybe it was, finished with a nice, there's a word for it. It's not coming to my mind right now. It's folded over and there's a nice rim. Rim is not the right word. But there's a nice seam going around the neck opening and everything else. But the neck opening is closed. You need to tear it or cut it open in order to open the neck opening. Why did they sell it that way? Well, why do they sell you shirts nowadays with all those collar stiffeners and all the plastic and the cardboard and everything that they stick into the shirt so it takes you 5 minutes to open a new shirt? Why? Because they want it to be nice and fresh and crisp and not wrinkled and everything else. So apparently back in the day, when they sold their shirts, their cloaks, whatever it was, very often the neck opening was not opened yet. It had to be opened by the end user. So the mechaber is going like this. The mechaber is telling you two different cases. The first case is you have an old garment. You gave it into the launderer. The launderer tied it closed. Yeah, you can open that because there's no problem. It's not a kesher shekayama. It's not a ma'aseh uman. Untie the knot, open the neck opening. But you can't have a brand new garment and open the neck opening for the first time. Why? Tikud moneh. Makabepatish. You bought the garment, can't be used. You can't pull it over your head. You can't use it until you open up that neck opening. So opening the neck opening, that is the makabepatish. That's the completion of the garment, and that you're not allowed to do. And that's what the Mechaber says. The Mesakin Manehu. That's why this is also. Says the Mishnah is cut chaf beis. The Mesakin Manehu. V'chayv b'sham makabepatish. Where we talk about tikkun moneh, we're talking about the Isser of Makeh Bepatish. Tuhu Gemara Malacha. That's finishing off the Beged. Okay, that was the Mechaber. Now, the Ramah brings down a Rabbeinu Yerucham that makes this second halacha of Sif Gimel a little bit more complicated. Again, in the world of the Mechaber, Paischin, you can't be Paiseach, the Beis HaTzavar Mechodosh, means you got the garment new, and the garment was never opened yet. So it's not pshat that when they sewed this shirt, they sewed it, it had a nice open neck opening, and then they sewed it closed and gave it to you. No. This shirt, this garment, never had a neck opening. It was manufactured with a closed neck opening. Now, says the Mechaber, you can't go open it because that would be makabepatish. You're finishing the garment. When they sell it to you 99.9% manufactured. But the last percentile over there, it wasn't done yet. No one opened the neck opening. That's for you to do. You have to finish it. You have to open the neck opening. Makabepatish. Says the Ramah, a little more machmir, the Ramah brings down the sheet of Rabbeinu Yerucham. Says the Ramah, Hago, afilu kvar niftach. Even if when they manufactured the beged, they did open the neck opening. Rak shechazar ha'uman, but then the manufacturer goes ahead, and now they go ahead ukesharai, and they tie it closed. Oy tifarai biyachad, or they stitch it closed. Kiderech shehu umnim oisen, which is the way that the manufacturers do things. So the Ramah, coming from the Rabbeinu Yerucham, is being more machmir than the Shulchan Aruch and then Rashi. Shulchan Aruch, in the name of Rashi, says, what's the makabepatish? This garment, simply the manufacturing process, was never finished. It was manufactured with a closed neck opening. You go ahead, you open it, slam dunk, makabepatish, it's aser. Rabbeinu Yerucham, no, it was manufactured fully. It had an open neck opening. But what the Uman does is he then ties it closed or stitches it closed. So it's kind of like the packaging, right? They make the shirt, they fully manufacture the shirt, then they go ahead, they button it up, they put in all those stupid pins and clips and cardboard and plastic and everything else. So too over here. They manufacture the shirt, they make the neck opening, but then they go ahead and they tie it closed or they stitch it closed. That's the way they package it. That's the way they send it to you. Says the Ramah, even that you're not allowed to open. Says the Mishnah is cut chaf gimel. Ukisharoi, they go ahead and they tie it closed. Says the Mishnah Berurah, he qualifies this a little bit. Remember, why is this going to be Aser? Even according to the Ramah and the Rabbeinu Yerucham, the Isser that we're dealing over here is Tikkun Moneh. Now, how is it Tikkun Moneh? If I'm telling you that it was fully manufactured and it was all ready and everything else, and just they went ahead and they tied it closed before they delivered it to you, so how is it Tikkun Moneh for you to open it up? Explains the Mishnah Chaf Gimel, Ukesharai betoiv. They tie it very tightly closed. Ad she'ena yacha lahatiroi, so that you cannot untie it. Ela imken yachtoi chachutim, you have to cut the threads, or yinatkein, or break them. So when they go ahead and they tie it closed or they sew it closed, it's not pshat that when they manufactured it, it was opened. And now they go ahead and they put in a little string and they make a simple knot. In that case, we're not going to say you did tikkun money. The neck opening was opened. What did you do? No. Says the Mishnah, you have to understand what's happening over here. They manufactured it and they made it open. But then they tied it closed or they stitched it closed so firmly that the only way for you to open it is either to cut those strings or tear those strings. That's like they mamish, as part of their process, they reclosed it. And now when you go open it, you're opening something. It's kind of like the chavis that we spoke about earlier on, a few simanim ago, when you have a barrel that had an opening and it was resealed. If it was resealed to the extent that it's not easily opened, so that when you make a Pesach, you're making a new Pesach. So too over here. It's true that when they manufactured the shirt, they manufactured it with a pre-existing opening. But then before they delivered it to you, they closed it. They reclosed it. They tied it or stitched it closed so tight that the only way to get it open is to cut it or rip it. So that, if you do that now, that's called tikkun moneh. So now when you make an opening, it constitutes making a new opening, and therefore it would be tikkun moneh. Now, how about if it's not tied so firmly? How about if they manufactured it with an opening, then they put in a string, they tied it closed, but you could untie it. Are you allowed to untie it on Shabbos? The answer would be yes, you could untie it on Shabbos. Why? Because again, apply the rules. It's not tikkun moneh because the opening was never closed. You're not making a new opening. If you could simply untie it, you're not making a new opening. So tikkun moneh, it's not. How about matir, untying a knot? Well, any knot that you're allowed to tie, you're allowed to close. What's the status of this knot? This knot wasn't meant to stay closed. So since it wasn't meant to stay closed, you'd be allowed to tie it. So you're also allowed to untie it. Now that does get a bit thorny because how long was it intended to stay closed? It goes back a little bit to what we learned earlier in this year. Ubesefer Yam Shel Shlomo Kasav, the Yam Shel Shlomo writes, if you have a shirt and the shirt is tied closed with straps or cords and they got tied so tightly that you can't untie it, everybody would agree that you would be allowed to cut them or rip them to get it open. Why? When you knot a shirt to tie the shirt closed, that knot is not a kesher shekayama klalu klal. It's not a kesher shekayama at all. It's always meant to be opened and closed and opened and closed. So it's not a kesher shekayama at all, such a tie. But you shouldn't do this, says the Yam Shel Shlomo. You should not do it in front of an Amaretz. You should do it discreetly, so that they shouldn't come to be mekel. Now, says the Chavetz Chaim, let's look at this Yam Shel Shlomo, and let's look at this Yam Shel Shlomo in the context of what the Ramah just told us. The Ramah just told us over here that if the uman, if the manufacturer makes a shirt, and he makes the shirt with an opening, but then he ties it or stitches it closed so firmly that you can't untie it, you're not allowed to rip it open. Why not? Because it's tikkun moneh. Okay? Let's apply that now to your shirt. You have the shirt, you tied it closed, but it got tied so tightly, so closed, that you can't open it. So now shouldn't it be tikkun moneh to go ahead and cut it open? You're cutting it open, you're making the shirt usable. So why isn't that tikkun moneh? Why isn't this Yam Shel Shlomo a stira to the Ramah? Not a stira. Yam Shel Shlomo can't be chaylik on the Ramah, but this Yam Shel Shlomo seems to fly in the face of the Ramah. So explains the Chavetz Chaim. Al karchach tzarich leimar. What we have to say is the Sfir Leila Yam Shel Shlomo. The Yam Shel Shlomo holds the dafka kishachazar uman ukisharoi asel anatek. The Yamshel Shlomo looked at the Ramah, and the Yamshel Shlomo was very medayik in the Ramah. What does the Ramah say? The Ramah says, Afilu kvar niftach rak shechazar ha'uman ukesharoi oitafaroi beyachad kederech sheha'umnim oisin. In the case of the Ramah, who reclosed the opening? The manufacturer. The manufacturer manufactured the shirt with a neck opening, and then the manufacturer closed it before he delivered it to you. You got a brand new shirt with a neck opening is tied or stitched closed so firmly that in order for you to open it, you either have to tear it or cut it. Then to tear it or cut it is tikkun moneh. You're finishing off a brand new garment. That's not the Yamshel Shlomo's case. The Yamshel Shlomo's case is you have an existing shirt. You washed your shirt, and when it came out of the wash, you went ahead and you tied the straps closed, and you accidentally tied them too tightly. Now it's not tikkun moneh to go cut the straps. It's an old garment. It's not a new garment. It's kind of like putting the shoelaces in the brand new shoe or putting the shoelaces in a used shoe. In the brand new shoe, it's tikkun moneh. In old shoe, it's not tikkun moneh. So too over here. Aval shar kashiroi shari. If it's something that happened in an old garment, if it's not done by the manufacturer, it's mutter. That's the way the Magen Avram explains this Yamshel Shlomo. Va'atam efsher, it could be the explanation of this is what I just told you. When the manufacturer does this to the neck opening of the shirt when he's manufacturing the shirt, when you take delivery of the shirt and you open it up, it could be makeh b'patish to gemar malacha. You're finishing off a brand new garment. But if something gets tied closed 3 months later in a already used beged, ain't shaykh b'zeh mishum makeh b'patish kishemanat goy achakach. If somebody is in the habit, he has such a shirt that gets tied closed, and he only opens it once a week. He leaves it closed, generally speaking. So then you're not allowed to make that knot, and you're not allowed to open that knot. Why? Because it's a 7-day knot. If it's a 7-day knot, so then already it's a semi-permanent knot. Rashi, Rosh, Ramah, it's a semi-permanent knot. It's an Issa D'Rabbanan. And this is a 7-day knot. So that's already a semi-permanent knot. Nevertheless, in Dakalasas Haniva, but if somebody generally closes the shirt using some kind of a slip knot, which is mutter to make a Shabbos, ubaloi kavana nikshar, and somehow the bow got pulled out and it ended up inadvertently getting tied closed, even, the Mefarshim say, if it gets inadvertently closed with a double knot, then it has the din of a kesher that was meant to be opened within 24 hours. It's considered a kesher that's not shel kayama klal because it was done inadvertently. The words of the Ramah were that the Uman tied the neck opening closed kederech shehu umnim oisin. The way that manufacturers do this, they're in the habit of tying or sewing, stitching the neck opening closed until they finish the work. Okay, we're already going a little bit long, and the next piece in the Ramah over here, beginning with the word v'lachein, is a little bit complex, and tomorrow's page is a little bit short, so I'm going to pause over here, and we will continue next time with the word v'lachein. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. This list of Limud HaTorah should be Megan and Gans Klal Yisrael. The Rosh should send Yeshua Sefer Parnasa and Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the B'Yeskel Tzedek. B'meherav Yameinu Amen. Be well.